I would say I'm very lucky that I'm sort of a natural minimalist, especially from like the philosophy side of it. Like, I've never been interested in buying fancy stuff. Like, I've never been driven by fancy cars or houses. And I have had opportunities throughout my life to purchase new, nice cars and even a house at one point. And I'm so thankful that I never did that, because I had that natural minimalist like mindset without even really acknowledging it or knowing what it was, thankfully. And as I got older, I started to kind of learn the psychology behind minimalism and obviously the benefits of it, and started to listen to different people that talk about it, and it started to make sense, and I related to it on a very high level, and I'm happy that it worked out that way, because I see a lot of people around me that are driven by materialist stuff, such as cars, clothes, fashion, jewelry, housing. Like, so many people buy cars that, yes, they may make you happy temporarily, and you'll feel good the first couple months or maybe even a year if you're lucky, but eventually you're still stuck with that car payment, and now the novelty of the car has worn off, and you're just like, you still have this car payment that 9 times out of 10 most people either can't afford it, like they have to struggle, scratch and claw to pay for it, or they just don't want to pay for it, and they realize that the money that's going towards that car payment could be going to traveling, could be going to their education, could be going other places that would actually make a big difference in their life. Like, the minimalist philosophy for like housing and cars is essentially buy what you need, not really what you want. I mean, obviously there's a balance there. You don't have to buy, a piece of crap car that breaks down all the time, but you want to buy stuff that's quality. But that does you could find quality for 10 times less than the latest and greatest thing. You would be surprised how many people list older vehicles that have low mileage and have been taken care of online. Like, if you just put the effort and time to look into it, I mean, obviously you're not going to look into it if you're driven by material things and you need the latest and greatest. This is only if you do want the freedom and you want no car payments and you don't want to feel like a slave paying for a car that was awesome for the first couple months, but then now you're pissed off that you bought it and it was a dumb decision looking back, and you purchased it emotionally. And that's the same thing with housing. Usually people buy houses that are either out of their price range, that yes, they can technically afford it because their lender approved it, but it's kind of like pushing it to the limits, like there's not much breathing room. Or they bought a house and it was kind of like too expensive and it was uncomfortable to pay for, and then maybe they lost their job and they had to accept a job that was lower paying, and now the house is crushing them. And it's because people, like, from what I see, from what I observe, a lot of people buy houses that are far too big for their needs. It's pretty much a flaunting ego or status symbol versus an actual necessity. If you bought what you actually needed, it would be a lot less than you think. Like cars, like if you viewed cars as just transportation and not some status symbol, that's good for your ego. And also the same for the house. If you weren't so particular and you are like, oh, what if my friends think, they don't like the area I live in, or my house is ugly, or it's too old. Like, if you didn't care about those things, like if you weren't worried about what other people thought, you would save so much money and have more free time and freedom to do the things you want. If you buy things that you can afford, that you can easily afford, that this gives you flexibility in other areas of your life, for traveling, for changing jobs if you want to. Like, if you have a house that is relatively cheap for your income, and you decide you don't want to work at your high income job that you hate, you can go work something else that might pay a little bit less but gives you a better quality of life, because you have that freedom, because you didn't become a slave to your material wants and needs. Like, you were just like, hey, I don't need the nicest house, I don't need the nicest car, I just need somewhere to lay my head and obviously be with my family and eat and hang out. But I also don't need a fancy car. I just need somewhere that gets me from point A to point B. And that's really the lens that you view that. And obviously, I believe there's a spectrum of minimalism. There's some people that there's either extremes. Like, there's people that will buy the crappiest car, like the very they don't care at all. Like, you don't have to buy a rust bucket. Like, it's just being smart about it. Like, instead of buying the latest and greatest car, why don't you look cars that are 5 or 10 years older than that one, that are perfectly reliable, are in perfect good condition, but might not be the latest and greatest, and it might not boost your status the way you want it to, but it's reliable and it saves you a lot of money and time. So this is just something to consider if you think more of like a minimalist. Obviously, this will validate the way you think, but some people, I don't know what it is about some people, that they're just so driven by what other people think and their ego, that they will buy stuff that they can't afford, and they'll have houses that are too big and too expensive, and buy cars, and then a year later they're like, damn, I still got to pay this $600 car payment, my insurance is $300. You're spending damn near $1,000 on a car payment. That $1,000 a month could be going towards taking a trip to Alaska, or going across the country, or just experiences with your family, or buying stuff that is actually useful for you, that would actually create joy and happiness in your life. You could go camping, you could do anything you want with that money, instead of just dumping it into a depreciating asset such as a car. House obviously isn't a depreciating asset for the most part, but you still don't have to buy a house that is extravagant, or has 2 extra rooms that you don't even really need, or is in a area that's ridiculous, like pricing wise. So just consider these things if you want more freedom in your life, or flexibility, obviously. But let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks.